I've been telling people that lately, a lot of us, you're not the only one. You are not the only one. But lately, a lot of us have been feeling like we're swimming upstream. Outside yesterday, I was walking around my neighborhood. I'm thrilled too, Jamie. It'll be awesome to see you there. I was walking around my neighborhood yesterday. The wind was blowing. It was just blowing really hard. And I was walking against the rain and I just pushing down the street. And I was thinking about how difficult, I got the wind, blowing in my face and all of this, but that's kind of how it's been for many of us the last couple months, right? Many of us have been feeling like the wind is blowing at us. The inflation is making everything cost more than you would believe. There are some of us that are struggling to find jobs. There are some of us that are struggling to get everything in order. And, many of us have been pushing against the wind or swimming upstream, as they say. And the thing to remember about swimming upstream is this. Number one, you don't drown swimming upstream unless you stop. No one ever drowned from swimming upstream. They drowned when they stopped swimming upstream. So as long as you are still swimming upstream, you're still going. You haven't drowned yet. So don't fall into the illusion that just because it's difficult, just because you're swimming upstream, that you've drowned, number one. Number two, important thing to be aware of is that if you swim upstream for a bit, you get that exercise, you get that conditioning. When you start swimming downstream again, when you're no longer swimming against the current, that strength that you built up by pushing against the grain, pushing uphill, that strength that you built up stays with you. And you are that much stronger when the odds are in your favor, and you can perform even better in better times. You have to learn to perform against all odds. You have to learn to perform in difficult circumstances so that when things are no longer difficult, you can do an epic job. And that's really important, right? And it has been an upstream year for us. But we have done miracles this year with the Center for Political Innovation. We launched the Summit Against Hypocrisy. It was a great conference in Washington, D.C., and it was pretty last minute. We barely had any time to plan it. But we had a conference in Washington, D.C. It was amazing. And before that, we did a reception after the Rage Against the War Machine rally, right? They had that Rage Against the War Machine rally. Well, we also, very last minute, organized a reception after the rally where Scott Ritter was given a platform. He was unable to speak at the actual rally. So we organized our own rally for Scott Ritter, and it was epic. It was absolutely epic. We did some amazing stuff this year, right? We then had an amazing weekend workshop in Missouri, in St. Louis, Missouri, near St. Louis, Missouri. We got a beautiful, beautiful lodge by a lake. And we had a good 40 people, I think. Maybe it was a little bit less than that, but I think if you counted everybody, it was about 40 people. And we had a 3-day weekend workshop, an intense, classes on Marxism, classes on socialism, classes on spirituality, fun activities, a lovely talent show. It was a great weekend that we had in Missouri. And then to top it all off, July 10th in New York City, we had an event in New York City, which, mind you, having an event in New York City is way harder than doing it anywhere else, because New York City, parking, don't even think about it. Don't even think about it. It was on a weekday. Forget about parking. The lodge. It was very hard to find a place. It was difficult to pull off the event. We had a small rally, just like a kind of a street speak out, and then we had an evening event that was addressed by all kinds of great people that spoke to our evening event. Chris O'Lully, Marnie Halassa. It was a great, great evening event. Jose Vega, who, the guy who's the great disruptor, who's been disrupting event. Oh, it was epic. We had guests from the Uhuru movement. We made then a beautiful film that Peter Coffin made of that event called Money and American Injustice, where we highlighted the Uhuru case and how important it is. We have moved mountains this year, right? And it has been difficult, and we've been swimming upstream the whole time, but it has been worth it. And we are going to end the year of 2023, the last month of the year, December is going to end with an epic anti-imperialist rally. You're on the list. You're on the list. We are going to end the year of 2023 with an epic all-day anti-imperialist rally. And I mean, like I said, it's going to be like 10 days of activity in Portland, Oregon. You don't want to miss it. You really don't want to miss it. And we are so excited. So we just need you. If you're going, please register, right? Register for the event. If you're going, please just go ahead and register. That way we know you're coming and we can make space for you. Register for the event. If you would like to send us a contribution to help us cover the costs, you can do that as well. A contribution would be appreciated. That'll help us put on the event as well. So I just wanted to get that out of there. Just let you all know what we're planning, what we have achieved. If you haven't had a chance, down below you can watch a documentary that Peter Coffin made about our March convention. Just a beautiful film he made. Just a beautiful, beautiful film he made about our March Summit Against Hypocrisy. You can go to the website, cpiusa.org, and you can look at the films section that we just updated and added to the website. We're doing really, really exciting stuff here. And the theme of our convention is Dare to Win, a World Beyond Imperialism, the National Convention of the Center for Political Innovation. It's going to be epic. We want you there. We want you to sign up. We want you to be there. So, I just can't pitch the convention enough. This is going to be the biggest event we've ever done. We have never had a convention that will be this big. 250 people in that auditorium, buses from the surrounding area, providing transportation. Yeah, it's going to be absolutely epic, so don't miss it. All right, that is the announcement I had to get out of the way. And, we're on the Rockfin right now. We're on the Rumble right now. And we're here on YouTube right now. And I'm taking the super chat questions as they come in. And you're on the list. Those will all be answered in the second half of our program. So there you go. I guess I'll just start with my opening remarks for now. Then I'll answer the questions people send in the second half. Folks, I have been to a bar mitzvah before. There was a friend of my wife's, a family she had worked with. They invited us to the bar mitzvah of their teenage son, and that was an experience. I'd never been to a bar mitzvah before. So I have been to a bar mitzvah, only one. But I have never been to a Jewish wedding. Just have never done it. There was a friend of mine who was Jewish, and he had a wedding, but it wasn't a traditional Jewish wedding. It was really an honor to go to his wedding, but he didn't do the traditional Jewish thing. I have never been to a traditional Jewish wedding. I have only seen them on TV. Right? In a lot of movies, you can watch traditional Jewish weddings. I have never been to one. But I do understand, based on what I have seen on television, again, I've never been to one, that there is a tradition at Jewish weddings that I've seen in many movies where the couple gets married, and I don't know if it's the groom or the rabbi or somebody, at the very moment that the couple gets married, they have a glass. I don't know. You've probably seen this in movies. They have a big glass, like a big, glass bottle or glass something. And at the very moment that the rabbi pronounces them man and wife, they're married, the rabbi or the husband, I don't know who it is, somebody stomps on the glass and the glass crunches And then, the music starts and that's the end. Um, right? And that's the how the wedding ceremony concludes. Um, and this is a tradition that they do at Jewish weddings, where they stomp on the glass. That's like the symbol that I assumed, at least when I saw it in the movies, I assumed that that was the symbol that the couple is now married. It's like, kaboom, like you bang the gavel, right? You know, but actually, I did ask. There was an older guy I got to spend some time with a couple years ago out in Los Angeles. Um, and he was an older guy who was gay, and he had just gotten married, and he was telling me about his wedding. And he was Jewish. And I asked him, I said, "Did you step on the glass at your wedding?" And he said, "Yes, yes, that's a very important part of my heritage, very important part of my tradition. We step on the glass at the wedding." Um, and then he explained to me what that tradition means. And I I guess there are many interpretations, right? It's like an oral tradition. Jews, they talk about the oral tradition. But so there's many different interpretations, I guess. But the way he explained it to me is that a wedding is a time of celebration, right? Because you're celebrating the couple getting married, possibly starting a family, all the family together. You're celebrating. It's a time of celebration. But the way he explained it was that the glass breaking, the crack in the glass, is to remind everyone there of the hard times that they had on the way to the celebration. And that is what the tradition is, right? It's you're remembering the hard times. You're having a really good time at the wedding. You're celebrating, but you're also that crunch of the glass is there to remind you of the hard times as well. Very interesting. Very, very, very interesting. Um, and I thought about that. I've thought about that tradition, and that's interesting to me because I'm not Jewish. I don't come from a Jewish background, and you know, but what that points to, the idea that when you're having a very celebratory good time, you should keep the bad times and remember them as well. Um, that brings me to an important point, a very, very important point that many people have made about human beings and their relationships and the way they relate to each other and to the world, which is that one of the strengths you can have, if you're going to be a strong, successful person in this world, is what they call, or some people call, an observer. It's the ability to not simply live in the moment. It's the ability to live in the present and the past and the future simultaneously, which is a very difficult thing for many people to do. And it is something you have to teach yourself to do and you have to struggle to do. And some people just can't do it. But if you can live in the past, in the present, and in the future all at the same time, you can accomplish a lot. If you simply live in the moment, you're a rat in a maze. Right? The rat in the science experiment maze. He's running to get the food, the peanut butter, the cheese. He's running away from the electrical shocks. He's going this way, he's going that way. He doesn't know where he's going. He doesn't know where he came from. He's just, oh, don't want to get zapped. Oh, want to get some cheese. He's running this way and that way. And that's the way animals tend to live to some degree or other. And that's the way a lot of people live their lives. They chase after the good. They smell something good, they run after it. They experience some pain, they run away from it. Um, But a lot of people just don't have much of a memory. They don't have much of a memory, and they don't have much of a perception, much of a foresight. And they just kind of run through the maze of life, chasing the cheese, avoiding the electrical shocks like an animal. But the ability to step back in that moment, in the moment you're in, and say, okay, this is where I came from. Okay, this is where I'm going to be in a few days. This is where I'm going to be in a few months. This is where I'm going to be in a few years. Of course, you don't know for sure, right? You can't predict the future. The ability to not simply be living in the present, but to operate strategically, drawing from the knowledge and wisdom of what you learned in the past and applying it in the present with an understanding of how this might pay out in the future. This is a very, very important aspect of being human and being successful as a human. They did a study years ago. It's a very famous study where they got a bunch of kids and they gave them all a marshmallow. And they said to them, you can eat your marshmallow now, but if you wait until the end of the day, you'll get 2 marshmallows. And there were some kids that ate their marshmallow right then. And there were some kids who said, wait, if I wait until the end of the day to eat my marshmallow, then I get 2 marshmallows. I'm going to wait until the end of the day because then I get 2 rather than just 1. Very famous study. And that study discovered that the kids who could wait for the 2 marshmallows were highly, highly successful. That was a huge, huge predictor of success in life. The ones who could wait for the 2 marshmallows, they went places, they achieved things, they made more money, they were happier, etc. And the kids who just, the end of the day, what's that? And they just ate the 1 marshmallow. Yeah, they tended to not go very far in this world. And it's not really a moral question. And that's what people miss about this. People try to make it a moral question. It's not really a moral question. These are kids. These are little children. It's about ability. Some of those kids had the ability to remember how good a marshmallow tastes, right? That's important because how do you know you want a marshmallow? To see it in front of them in the moment and see how much they would like to eat it. And then to realize that if they waited until the end of the day, they could get 2 marshmallows, and to be strategic, to restrain their hunger or whatever, their desire to eat a nice, sweet, tasty thing until the end of the day. And some kids were able to do that. And those were the kids that could live in the past, live in the present, and live in the future all at the same time. They had a strong observer. Whereas some of those kids, maybe they could remember how good the marshmallow was. Maybe they could feel like eating it in the moment, but they just couldn't bring themselves to be strategic and wait until the end of the day and get 2 marshmallows. However, there's another aspect of this experiment that is worth looking into, because this is again, right? I'm off the top of my head here. I've talked about these issues before, but I'm just kind of thinking at you over a microphone here on a Sunday afternoon, right? There's another aspect of this experiment. It just occurred to me, which is that those kids who sat there and said, if I wait until the end of the day, I get 2 marshmallows. They had a desire for more. And that may be an indicator as well. Because some of these kids might have just been like, well, hey, I got one marshmallow. I don't know what I'm doing at the end of the day. I'll just be happy with the one marshmallow. But then these kids, for whatever reason, the successful ones, they were like, well, I've got one marshmallow. I could just eat it now. But, two is probably better than one. And they waited. Now, I got to tell you, when I was a kid, if they had tried this experiment on me, the results would have been skewed because I just don't like marshmallows. I'll just tell you that. When I was a kid, marshmallows, I just didn't like them. There was just something about them and just the texture. I just don't like marshmallows. So my results, they would have given me one marshmallow and I wouldn't have even eaten that. I probably would have said, do I have to eat it? And they said, well, if you eat it right now, little Caleb, you can eat two at the end of the day. I probably would have just said, well, actually, I don't even want this one. So I'm not going to eat this one. I'm not going to eat the two at the end of the day. You can keep your marshmallows, Mr. Scientist. You can keep your marshmallows. You got any chocolate? You got any Reese's? You got any popcorn? But not marshmallows are just not my thing, buddy. Not my thing. So would that have ruined the results somehow? I mean, I probably, if I didn't eat that first marshmallow, I would have gotten the second one, but I wouldn't have gotten it because I had a strong observing ability. I just wouldn't have gotten it because I don't like marshmallows. I wouldn't have eaten the second one either. I would have just left my marshmallows there. Maybe I would have traded my marshmallows for, I don't know, for a toy car with another kid or something. I don't know. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. I'm just being facetious here, but it's important to be able to remember the past, remember the present, and remember the future. It's very, very important to be able to do that. Part of the reason I get so frustrated with people every time another one of these wars starts is because I feel like when it comes to the news cycle, they really don't want you to do this. They don't want you to know any history. They don't want you to really understand what's going on in the present time, and they especially don't want you to understand the future. I mean, how many times have we been there, right? Bashar Assad is killing people with chemical weapons. Oh, my God. Obama's got to send the missiles. He's got to bomb Syria. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Remember that? Right? I was there, 2013. That's the only time I've ever appeared on CNN. Mind you, my only CNN appearance ever, the only time they ever allowed me on the main cable news network in the United States was when U.S. mainstream media was going, oh my God, we're going to, Assad is gassing his own people. Obama needs to send the missiles. Obama needs to send the missiles. Here, I'll show you at risk of being arrogant, right? Why don't I just, refresh all your memories. This was September of 2013. All right, I'll just put it on the screen here. Or maybe I won't. Maybe I won't because it's not here. Here it is. Yeah, September of 2013.
So as Congress makes up its mind on whether to take military action against Syria, anti-war groups are getting ready to stage protests in Times Square today. Rosa Flores joining me live now from New York. So Rosa, tell us more about the protests unfolding there in New York.
Yeah, well, those protesters are making their way here to Times Square, and I'm actually here with one of the organizers, Caleb from the International Action Center. And I know that you guys are expecting dozens, if not hundreds, of people here. But first of all, explain to us kind of what is your mission? Why are you guys here?
The last thing we need right now is a new war against Syria. Right now, they're cutting food stamps, hospitals are closing, schools are being shut down. There's a budget crisis in this country. We do not need more money for a new war against Syria. Every one of the cruise missiles they would send would cost over $1 million. That could be teachers that could be hired. That could be hospitals that could be opening. But instead, it's blowing up and killing people in another country, and that's not right.
Now, let me ask you about the support that you're getting, because from what I understand, lots of organizations are coming out of the woodwork and asking to be involved. Tell us a little bit about the involvement of other organizations that perhaps would not be, in this case, participating in something like this.
Well, 89% of the U.S. public is opposed to this war. People in this country overwhelmingly oppose an attack on Syria. But that won't mean anything unless people do something about it. If people aren't in the streets and organizing and demonstrating and making clear to the government that they will not let this war pass, that won't mean anything. anything because we've seen so many times the government not listen to the people and go to war. I don't believe what's coming out about this chemical weapons attack. I have a lot of questions about it. There are a lot of facts that just aren't adding up. And we've heard about weapons of mass destruction before. There's so many lies to take us into war. We don't need a new war. We need jobs, schools, education, and not a new war against the Syrian people. And these rebels that our government and our tax dollars are paying for, they're not good folks, and they're doing awful things there in Syria, and we should not be supporting these rebels in Syria.
Yeah, that was, and I've always told the story. I will never forget it. They had, that beautiful woman, Rosa Flores, right? And she was there and she interviewed me. We chatted beforehand. She asked me where I was from. I said, Ohio. And she said, oh, I'm from Texas, and, they put me on there and they expected that I would just get on there and be like, give peace a chance, man. War is bad. They thought I would be like some kind of hippie or something, right? And when I said that little bit at the end, and I said, and these rebels that our tax dollars are funding, Rosa, the CNN reporter, she's holding the microphone there. She's going, when I started at the end she was happy with what I was saying. Oh, spend money on schools and not in jobs, not war. I mean, she was fine with that. When I said, oh, people need to protest, they're against the war. Yeah, she's fine with that. But when I said, we've heard about weapons of mass destruction before, she's like, and we've heard about weapons of mass destruction before. And then I said, and these rebels that are being backed by our tax dollar, she was just like, ah, and then it was like, cut. And I, like, as soon as the feed went down, like, yeah, the cameraman, Rosa Flores there, the reporter, they were all just like, it was like a deer in the headlights. I think they were honestly scared of losing their jobs because of what I said, right? There are certain things you just can't say on national American television. And I have never, ever, I'll tell you that much, I have never been invited back on CNN ever again. And for a long time, we couldn't even find the clip of that. CNN doesn't have it on their website. Now, after I talked about it, and I've linked people to transcript enough times, a number of people finally reached out to me, and they were able to like dig into like archives online, and they were able to find it. But they didn't even really want that clip out there. Shout out to the person who found that clip for me. It was really kind of you. I really do appreciate it. But there are certain things you just can't say. But what was I saying there? I was saying we've heard about weapons of mass destruction before, like how there weren't any weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Like how they said Saddam Hussein was ripping babies out of incubators, and that wasn't true. Like they said that the Taliban was refusing to give up bin Laden, which wasn't actually true. They said, just let us process him in our courts. Oh, no. Nope, they won't turn him over. So we're bombing Afghanistan. That wasn't true. How they said that, Slobodan Milosevic was committing genocide against ethnic Albanians, and that wasn't true. Every U.S. war, every single one starts with a lie. The Gulf of Tonkin was a lie. That was a complete lie. The invasion of Panama, right? I think it was 1991. George Herbert Walker Bush invaded Panama to remove Manuel Noriega. It turns out that was based on a lie, right? That they said the Panamanian soldiers had fired on U.S. troops. In reality, the U.S. troops had like charged at the border without, and so they'd shot at them like once. They said, oh, they fired on U.S. troops, and they invaded Panama, right? Every U.S. war starts with a lie, but yet there are certain people that just every time they follow it, and they just don't have that memory. And not only does every U.S. war, start with a lie, right? Libya, they said that Gaddafi was handing out Viagra so his soldiers could rape women. That wasn't true. Every U.S. war starts with a lie, number one. And then every time one of these countries is attacked and destroyed by the United States, it never benefits from it, right? Is Iraq any better off since the USA invaded in 2003? No. Is Libya any better off since NATO violently overthrew the government with cruise missiles and destroyed Libya? No. People are drowning in the Mediterranean trying to get out of Libya, the hell the United States has created in Libya. Is Afghanistan any better off? 20 years the United States occupied Afghanistan and was trying to stabilize it. Did it get any better? Nope. The drug gangs expanded. The terrorist groups expanded. More heroin More heroin was spread across the world. But no, Afghanistan did not get any better off. There's not a single place you can point to where a U.S. regime change operation has made people better. So people aren't even thinking about the future, right? I mean, it's like they're not thinking about the past and how every U.S. war has been proven to start with a lie. They're not thinking about the present. They're just assuming that what CNN tells them is true. And then they're not thinking, like, how is this going to play out in the long term? Okay, the USA invaded Iraq, right, to provide the Iraqi people with freedom. And what was the result of that? What was the ultimate result of that? Did the Iraqis get any better as a result of these operations? No. Did the Afghans get any better off? Did the Libya So what is the ultimate end game of U.S. military interventions? Will it make life better for the people in these countries to have the United States go in and topple the government and bomb the country to shit? Does that make life better in countries? No. No, it doesn't. It clearly does not make life better in any of these countries. But this requires you to have an observer. This requires you to be able to track events for a long period of time. And they don't want you to do that. They want you to live in the moment. They want to just flash on the screen some dying children. They want you to just cry your eyes out. Oh my God, those poor children. And they don't want you to think about anything. They don't want you to ask, well, wait, is this really true? Because you guys lied a bunch of times. They don't want you to ask that. They don't want you to go, hey, is this really, if the USA invades the country, is it going to like benefit the people there? Because last time, they don't want you to think about that. They just want you to look at the image that they're showing you of dying babies or mothers crying or whatever. They just want to flash that before your eyes. And they want you to be horrified by what you see and follow and obey them. That's what they want. That is what they want. And they always, this is classic, they always portray anyone who doesn't agree with their latest operation. They always portray them as just being a cold-hearted isolationist, right? A cold-hearted person who just doesn't care about those others and says, oh, we should focus on our own thing. And they always counter that with, oh, I think we have a moral responsibility to do something. We have a moral. And then they've even talked about adding this to the UN Charter, R2P, responsibility to protect, right? And they morally grandstand about it. That's how they operate. And you know what the most sinister thing about this is? All right? Most people are good. This is what this really points to. Most people are good. Most people have an altruistic, compassionate side deeply embedded into their character, or else this wouldn't work. Right? The fact that, if they flash images before you on CNN or MSNBC or Fox of children dying, and they say, don't you want to do something about it? And that's the way they sell the wars, that indicates that most of us generally have compassion on other people. This is somebody in some other country we don't even know, but CNN is showing us images of them dying and plucking our heartstrings with it. And many of us fall for it because we're good people, because we care. The problem is that our good intentions, our basic human solidarity, our desire to help our fellow man, our desire to alleviate the suffering of some other person, is being intentionally manipulated by some of the most evil people in history. They know that we're good in our souls. They know that we have love in our hearts. They know that we're not like them. We're not evil. We're not selfish. We're not murderous. We're not ruthless like they are. Unlike them, we have basic human compassion. And in their eyes, they see that as a weakness. They think we're stupid because we care about our fellow human beings. Right? Oh, these people, they care about other people. What losers. Oh my God, what a fool. He cares about somebody else. I've heard that in Washington, D.C., among career politicians, aspiring political figures, they have an insult that they use for people who actually believe in right and wrong. And they call them Boy Scouts. Oh, so-and-so is such a Boy Scout. He thinks right and wrong exist. He wants to help other people. Oh, boy. Look, there's a little Boy Scout. That's the term that they use to deride people who actually believe in right and wrong. And they think that it is a sign of inferiority, that the idea that we want to help other people, that we want to do what's right, they view that as a flaw in our character, that we're weak, we're inferior somehow because we want to help other people. Meanwhile, they think that what makes them so great is that they have no such feelings. And it is their ability to manipulate such feelings to achieve what they want that they consider to be one of their greatest attributes. And that is the way our leaders see things. And if you read my latest book, Where is America Going? Well, it's not my latest book, but one of my books I published this year, Where is America Going? Marxism, MAGA, and the Coming Revolution. If you've read this book, you'll know Chapter 4, I spell out what the worldview that has become the ruling ideology in our time. The ruling ideology in our time is the worldview that has come to dominate Western society is called philosophical irrationalism. That is what the elite believe. And there are many different strands of philosophical irrationalism. There's many different variants that emphasize different aspects of philosophical irrationalism. But more or less, all of the elite in the West, all of the political leaders, all the owners of major corporations, all the people that are setting the curriculum for big universities, all the people in the media, the major mainstream media, they all more or less have a philosophical irrationalist view of the world. Now, what is philosophical irrationalism? It's funny, Jonathan, you say this, basically as close to Satanism as possible. You're literally correct. Literal Satanism, a religion started by Anton LaVey, preaches this very concept. I am not exaggerating, right? You want to say Satan in terms of evil, but I'm telling you about the literal Church of Satan. Followers of Anton LaVey, this is what they think. They literally believe compassion is weakness. You should be blatantly selfish. That is what they believe. But philosophical irrationalism, it goes back to a debate that took place in the 1800s. There are many different philosophers arguing about the nature of the world. There are certain debates that have just gone on in philosophy for thousands of years, right? We know about idealism versus materialism. I think, therefore I am, says Descartes. I am, therefore I think, says Marx and materialism, right? That's idealism versus materialism. But the debate between the rationalists and the irrationalists was, is the universe defined by order, or is the universe defined by chaos? Is there order in the universe, or is the universe defined by chaos? And those who believe that the universe is defined by order are called rationalists. They believe that the universe is, to some degree or other, rational. And they point toward mathematics and the laws of physics to indicate that there is a rationality to the universe. However, you have a strand of people called the irrationalists, who argue that the universe is not defined by order, but rather by chaos. that there's no beginning and there is no end. There is no creator. There's no Big Bang. There's no origin. And there is no end. And it's just a bunch of crazy chaos. Nowadays, many of them would say we're just headed toward entropy. We're just headed toward entropy. We're just eventually headed toward entropy. Eventually, the universe just slows down, right? We're heading toward entropy. And those who adhere to philosophical irrationalism view all attempts to create an understanding of reality, to point to actual truths, as totalitarian. They say that if you're going around telling people that there is actual truth in this world, there is actual morality in this world, that there is objective reality, that some things are actually true and some things are actually false, that if you do that, you are being totalitarian. And that is a crime. And that rather, they argue, the only ethical or moral way to behave, they argue, is to engage in deconstruction, to take narratives apart. Postmodernism is a modern form of philosophical irrationalism. It argues that any grand narrative of human history, any ideology and worldview is somehow a vehicle for oppressing people. It's a vehicle through which the sheep assemble to suppress the great thinkers, the great intellectuals. Christianity is a plot by the inferior rabble to hold back the great men who could rule over the rest of us with their superiority. That is what they believe, that the superior ones are being held down by morality, being held down by truth, being held down by ethical systems and narratives, etc. And so the best thing to do is to take apart ethical systems, to take apart ideology, to take apart narratives so that we can be reduced to the law of the jungle and the strongest can work their way to the top without any restraints upon them. This is philosophical irrationalism. And Friedrich Nietzsche is probably the most outspoken and most prominent voice of philosophical irrationalism. And if you want to read a very thorough critique of the Nietzschean worldview, read The Destruction of Reason by George Lukács. Not a short text, but George Lukács was a Hungarian communist leader, and he wrote this book explaining how the crimes of the Nazis were rooted in philosophical irrationalism. Martin Heidegger and Friedrich Nietzsche were both more or less giving voice to this notion that the world is simply a jungle where the strongest survive, and that right and wrong and ethical systems and truths are just for suckers. That's the worldview that they put forward. And that among our elite in the United States, all of them more or less believe one version of this or other. You know, Ayn Rand, now her objectivism isn't into the irrationalist aspect so much, but it's really into compassion is weakness, the guilt-peddling Jesus industry, I believe she called Christianity. Ayn Rand has her own version of this, and that's popular at business schools. I believe Stacey Abrams, as well as Paul Ryan, both cite Ayn Rand as one of their greatest intellectual influences. They read Atlas Shrugged. They read all of that. But a thinker who's probably much more influential among the American elite, pushing a philosophical irrationalist view, is a guy named Leo Strauss. And his piece was Persecution and the Art of Writing. It's a philosophy book he wrote, basically arguing that all of modern philosophy was written in code because the great philosophers were being persecuted. They were being persecuted by the irrational or by the inferior sheep. All of philosophy has been written in code because the great intellectuals, the philosopher kings that Plato spoke of, live in fear of the rabble who would try to make them conform. And so they write in code. And that is Leo Strauss' big academic thesis. And Leo Strauss cultivated many of his students to view themselves as a superior caste of intellectuals whose job was to rule over the inferior ones. And that in order to do so, in order to protect freedom, right? When the great philosopher kings rule over the inferior ones, that's freedom. But the greatest threat to freedom, he argued, was populism. When the inferior ones get together and start demanding their rights, start demanding jobs and schools and housing and healthcare and education. Oh my God, that's totalitarianism. That's a threat. When the rich and powerful, the rulers, the elite, when they start getting told what to do by the people. Democracy is dictatorship. Democracy is the end of freedom because it takes away the ability of the great intellectual, the great superior ones to rule over the rest of us. And so when the sheep get together and start rallying and organizing and building mass movements, and sometimes they're communist, and sometimes they're fascist, and sometimes they're Christian, and sometimes they're Muslim, but whatever it is, whenever the rabble start getting together and organizing and demanding the elite and telling the rich people, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. You must do this. You must do this. We need jobs. We need housing. We need our services to be met. We cannot let you rule over us. We have demands. We will assert our humanity whenever that starts happening. That's the end of freedom. Because freedom is the ability of the natural superiors to just rise to the top with no interference. That's the Straussian worldview. That mobilization of the people, democratic participation, mass movements are inherently totalitarian. And that in order to prevent them, and this is the interesting part, it is necessary for the elite to dumb things down, to make things simple. You're on the list, Gabby. To make things simple, to spread propaganda, to craft the minds of the masses, to make sure they never get mobilized and become a threat to the freedom of the great intellectual. It is necessary to engage in the noble lie. And this is a big aspect of neoconservative thinking. In order to keep the masses in line, in order to protect freedom, freedom which is defined by the great intellectual not being suppressed by the rabble, in order to protect the freedom of the philosopher kings, from the populism and the mass movements and the moral and ethical inclinations and the needs of the people. In order to do that, it is necessary for the elite to deceive the masses. Now, a lot of Leo Strauss's writing is not available. It's not. Leo Strauss had kind of a club of students, his promising students, people that he thought were high achieving. He would invite them over to his house. He would have social events with them. And Leo Strauss was connected with American intelligence. And those who really got his worldview rose up on the left and on the right. Very interesting. Susan Sontag, she was trained by Leo Strauss, and she was a leftist. But many of the Bush administration, Reagan administration conservatives were also trained by Leo Strauss. But if you were somebody who really grasped his elitist worldview, you would be invited into his kind of inner circle, and he would cultivate you to think a certain way. And doors would be opened for you, and you would find your way into the elite. And Leo Strauss, his favorite television program was Gunsmoke. You ever see Gunsmoke? You ever watch Gunsmoke? It's an old television program from the 1950s. A cowboy show. The good guy always wears a white hat, and he's all good. Doesn't have any negative attributes. And the bad guy, he wears a black hat, and he's all bad. He does not have a single redeeming quality. And there is no question about who's right, and there's no question about who's wrong, and the bad guy always loses, and the good guy always wins. And there's always a happy ending. Gunsmoke. Leo Strauss loved Gunsmoke, and he thought that that was how the American people, the sheep, the inferior ones, should be cultivated to understand the world. That the complexities of the world and reality were reserved for the elite, but for the masses, they needed Gunsmoke. And don't underestimate how influential Leo Strauss was. They call him the intellectual godfather of neoconservatism. They also give that title to Irving Kristol. But don't underestimate how influential he was, because we had two presidents. Two. Who directly worked to cultivate a cowboy persona. One of them was Ronald Reagan, who was himself a cowboy actor. He had played cowboys in cowboy movies. He was a cowboy actor who got into politics. And the other was George W. Bush, who was born in Connecticut and had a father from Connecticut, an old money Yale skull and bones dad. But yet, when George W. Bush ran for president, he put his cowboy hat on. He cut brush out on his ranch. He had Barney the dog. And he talked like this. My fellow Americans, George W. Bush, Commander-in-Chief of America. We're going to save the country from Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda are terrorists, and they're bad. I'm going to destroy Al-Qaeda. George W. Bush, Commander-in-Chief of America. He actively cultivated a cowboy persona. Well, what was that about? I think the fact that the public relations of two neoconservative presidents actively fit a cowboy movie has a lot to do with the fact that the intellectual godfather of neoconservatism said that Americans should understand foreign policy and the world in terms of Gunsmoke. I think it has a lot to do with that. It has a lot to do with that. I think it has a lot to do with that. I don't think you can underestimate that one bit. Not one bit can you underestimate that. But the more you look into philosophical irrationalism, the more you look into the way our elites rule over us and the way that they see things, the more that you can see that this is all just kind of like a dog chasing its tail. Why is it necessary for the elite to rule over us? Well, because we're not as smart as them. Right? They're the smart ones. They're the superior ones. And why is populism and mass movements so bad? Because it would lead to the people not being ruled over, not suppressing them. So isn't that democracy? If the masses of people getting together and asserting their desires in the form of a popular mobilization is somehow considered to be a bad thing, if the will of the people being enacted, if the elite being forced to comply with the needs of the masses, if the actions of the state require the consent of the government, isn't that democracy? Isn't that democracy that they're against? But they say they're defending democracy. They say that they are defending democracy because they're defending freedom. But if the people are being lied to and manipulated and being controlled, and any effort to bring the people into politics and mobilize the people to assert their needs is being suppressed, isn't that the opposite of freedom? Isn't that totalitarianism? But no, it's to stop totalitarianism. It's a dog chasing its tail. They don't know what they believe. It is the confused notions of the elite. But it points to a reality of U.S. society. And the world today that is very, very hard for them to explain. I've been to Russia before. I'm going again this week. Putin's wildly popular. He's a wildly, wildly popular person. I was there in the 2018 elections. I covered the 2018 elections in Russia. Putin is a wildly popular guy. But we're told Russia is not a democracy. We are told, even though they had elections that were monitored, even though Putin clearly won the elections by a lot, even though no one disputes the fact that Russians like Putin. Putin is very popular. His policies are very popular with the Russian people. We are told Russia is not a democracy. Meanwhile, here in the United States, we elect our leaders, all kinds of freedom of speech and freedom of assembly, but nobody's happy. Nobody is happy. Everybody's upset. We're mad at Joe Biden. People were mad at Donald Trump before that. People were mad at Barack Obama before that. Everyone is unhappy. If you ask people how Congress is doing, they go, blah. People are mad about not having jobs. People are mad about not having health care. People are mad about the roads in their neighborhoods crumbling. They're mad about the drug gangs and the narco gangs that are destroying people's lives. They're mad about unrest. They're mad about the suppression and the rolling back of their civil liberties. They're mad. They're unhappy. Nobody likes the American government. People on the far left are mad and unhappy. People on the far right are mad and unhappy. People in red states are mad and unhappy. People in blue states are mad and unhappy. Everybody is dissatisfied. Everyone's upset. Big problems in our society aren't getting resolved. They're not getting resolved the way one group would want it, and they're not getting resolved in the way the other group would want it. Things aren't getting fixed. Shit's broke, and it ain't getting fixed. I think Bill Cosby, He said, all the dogs are pooping and nobody is scooping. Are we allowed to talk about Bill Cosby? I think he's a rapist or something. Whatever. All the dogs are pooping and nobody is scooping. Problems ain't getting solved. Everyone's mad and upset. But we all go to the polls and we vote. And we elect a gridlocked Congress. We have a president that half the country hates. And then we get another president and the other half the country hates him. But this is democracy. This is freedom. Meanwhile, these countries that we're told to hate, China, Russia, Vietnam, Cuba, North Korea, Nicaragua, Venezuela, these countries, the leaders are very, very popular. They come into office and they say, we are going to solve this problem. And they win the election and they get into office and then they solve the problem. Well, that's dictatorship, we're told. That's dictatorship. But here in the United States, the problems never get solved. Everyone is mad at the government all the time. Nothing gets fixed, but we're free. But we're free. That's freedom, we're told. Well, I think it's about time we realized it's freedom because they are free. They are free from us. It's freedom for them when they don't have to care what we want. When they can continue to enrich themselves and we can continue to get poorer. When they can continue to let our neighborhoods crumble while they bomb countries overseas, that's freedom. Freedom for them is freedom from us. That's what they mean when they say freedom. And when they say dictatorship, what they mean is when they are no longer free from us. When some kind of mass movement, some kind of popular mobilization, some kind of leader emerges who can kick their ass, who can kick them around, who can force them to do what the masses of people want. When that happens, that's what they call dictatorship. And they do not like that. And that is what you need to understand. And that is my message for you all this afternoon. Those are my opening remarks.